Mrs. Richter, thank you so much for accepting my invitation. And you used to live in Hodgeville.
Yes, I lived there for 20 years. Actually, not in Hodgeville, but in the community.
And one day you decided to found a museum.
Yes, we lived on my husband's farm, and they had a lot of what I thought was junk on piles and in buildings and so on. And then we happened to make a trip to Calgary and visit the Heritage Museum. And I was just so excited to see all this. I just loved it. And my husband kept saying, "Well, we've got that at home, and we've got that at home, and we've got that at home." And I said, "Oh my, like where is this?" Well, it's got to be preserved like this is, sort of thing, eh? So I went home and started digging through granaries and in between granaries, and I found old pots and pans and old tools and things in my mother-in-law's house that she saved a lot of. And so that got me excited enough to say, I wonder if we can have one in Hodgeville. So I put a note in the post office saying who would be interested in starting a museum in Hodgeville. Well, we got a lot of different remarks like, what would you put in it? Garbage. And what would this cost the taxpayers? And yeah, I have property in Florida too. It was, there was silly remarks like that because when you say the word museum, everybody thinks something different, don't they? They have a different picture in their mind. So for them, their picture was different than mine. But there were 7 people who just signed their name. So I called those 7 people, who of course were friends. And we all got excited and because they had things too that could be saved. So we got together a few times and said, well, we have no money, so we can't buy a building. And where are we going to have this? So we tossed that around for a while. And one of my dear friends who's passed away, Ev Krautchik, said, what about the basement of the clinic? Well, that was in the 1950s. It was moved. This building was moved to Hodgeville, and it was the hospital. And in the basement were rooms where the nurses lived. So the rooms were there. There was old linoleum there. There was all kinds of things, but now it was just kind of a junk storage place. So we got in touch with the town, the village, who at that time owned the building from the healthcare. And upstairs was just a clinic. So we asked about, having the basement for a museum, and they agreed. That was awesome because for $1 we had the basement of this old building. So then the next step was, how do we do this? So then I went and took quite a few courses on setting up museums, how you keep track of them, how you preserve them, all sorts of things, and really loved doing that. So then the rest of us, the rest of the 7, or there was 8 people now with me, got together and made some rules. What's our vision of having this museum? And so we all agreed that it should be just artifacts from Hodgeville. It wasn't going to be a collection of antiques. It was just going to be local artifacts so that when people came to visit it, they would see their parents' things or, whatever. And the rooms were there. So we had a kitchen, living room, dining room, bedroom, tool room, and a hallway to display all kinds of history. So it was just perfect for us. So we got paint from the co-op, and the 8 of us painted and started fixing things up and telling people about it. And one of the older gentlemen in town was the Alex Springer, who is gone now as well, had a lot of older things, and he was the first one to bring over things for us. Some people were willing to give things to the museum, and some people, were a little bit afraid. They wanted to keep them. So we had made kind of a rule of you can give them or you can consign them. And we would keep track, and you can come and get them anytime you want, sort of thing, just as long as we had them for display. And lo and behold, our museum filled up. So we have all of these rooms. It became a centerpiece. We did a lot of things as a group, putting on family days, parades, July 1st celebrations, dances, Ladies' Day. We just planned a whole lot, and the community got very much involved with us. I know it's at least 40 years ago that we opened this. And our opening, what we did was invite all the people, the seniors, to be part of the opening ceremony, because they were the children of homesteaders who came there. Previous to this, I had done a series on just it went to interview people who were 80 years old and over, and they were the children of homesteaders. Two of them were the original homesteaders, and they told me their story. The whole community got very involved with the seniors, gathering them together for teas and things like that, and they became part of our opening. And of course, none of them were left. And the funny part of it is, when I did those stories, I thought they were really old people, and now I'm 80 and I'm not old. So that was interesting to come up with on our 100th anniversary of Hodgeville. But anyway, that's really the story of our museum. Eventually, the clinic upstairs closed and built a new one downtown, and now the top is empty. So again, the board or the committee that we started this got together and said, why don't we open something upstairs? So not moving the museum up, but we decided that maybe a craft shop would be good. So we rented out rooms because there was different people that they were sewers. Actually, it wasn't even a craft shop. It was what I went around saying is we're going to open a mini mall. And of course, everybody kind of laughed at that, a mall in Hodgeville. But there were so many people with talents, people that sewed, people that made wood things, people that wrote books, whatever, and they or sold different things. So they rented a room, not very much money, because this was supposed to be a community thing, sort of thing. And then we set up a volunteer schedule that whoever wanted to volunteer working there, because somebody had to be there to work. We set that up as I took Saturday, somebody else took Friday, somebody else took Monday, and they were responsible for that day. We had a bookkeeper who kept track of whose things we sold. And so and if you volunteered, you didn't have to pay anything to sell your product in there. So that was their compensation, sort of thing. So it worked very well. We had an awesome mall with all sorts of things in it. I'm not a crafter. I'm not good at that. I'm only good at organizing and planning. So I was one of the first ones to buy Beanie Babies and put them in the shop. And they ended up 2 years later to be very popular, but at first they weren't until they became a collector's item, sort of thing. And it worked very well. But as time goes on, the seniors, moved on. They passed away. Younger people are not that interested in history. They're so busy doing other things. It's just different. Our communities are different. Newer people moving in that are, they're there to enjoy their retirement or their life, but they're not really that interested in the history of the town. And so there are only 3 of us left of the board, and that's Jean Dane and Terry Braun and myself. And I don't live there. So it's a lot of commitment on their part. We don't get a lot of visitors anymore. Sometimes in summer. Jean is just an awesome curator. She takes them down to the museum, and she's lived there all her life. So she can tell them stories like you wouldn't believe, eh? And people will come. And what would you say, rewarding is when kids come back that lived there years ago and see their grandparents or their parents' artifacts in there and hear and see their stories and things like that. So there's so many rewarding things to going to that museum sort of. Now it's really a coffee shop. And boy, are we lucky that there is a group of people that go there for coffee every morning, pay for their coffee, and that helps pay our utility bills because the town is very, very good to us, and they help us look after the building, and we're, in exchange, keeping the building going. So it's a great relationship.
When you started the museum, what was the population of Hodgeville?
Probably it's never really, it's always around 100. It's always around 100, maybe 150 at that time, but no more. It hasn't grown and it hasn't died. We did a lot of advertising when we first started. And the other thing that really helped too with the crafts was there was a time when money was short and people didn't travel. They stayed home to save their money. And that's when their talents in crafts came out to earn extra money. And there was beautiful crafts. And I happened to, I would go to a lot of trade shows and so on and know these people who had crafts and started taking in their things on consignment from all over the country. So we had beautiful crafts in there from all over. So it was a nice craft store with with the coffee that goes with it type of thing.
Are there events, festivals that are taking place there?
Well, they still have a hockey rink, so they're doing trying to keep that alive, and some curling. There's a community hall, which is the center of the town because there's fall suppers, there's funerals, there's community events that happen there. So there's a library in there, a library. The town hall has moved to this center, community center. Our hotel was just recently purchased, and that is a real asset to the community because, if you have food and a place to eat, and it's good food, and so that's definitely helped to keep our community going, type of thing. Mm-hmm.
A lot of the young people are moving to the city, and these rural areas are somehow shrinking.
Yes, farms are getting bigger and bigger. There are definitely some young people that are farming their parents' farms and so on and so forth. But again, they're getting bigger, and it's taking so much of their time. People are so busy working and trying to make a good living. History doesn't mean as much to them as it did to us, years ago. Young people are just not as enthused about our history as we were back then. So the communities are, like the seniors that own homes there have passed away. So what's happening is people from other provinces are moving to our smaller towns because it's reasonable to live there. So they didn't grow up there, so they don't really care about the history of the town. So that makes a difference as well. Where before everybody that lived there grew up there and were interested, sort of thing.
You mentioned that you were a teacher for about 8 years or 10 years.
Yes.
What did you teach?
Well, the interesting, my first school, it was all elementary schools, but my first school was at a little town near Hodgeville, which isn't a town anymore. It's not there. But I had 7 grades and 9 students. And that was I was probably 19 years old. It was a great year. But it was quite an experience. And then I did teach in different cities and stuff. And then I stopped teaching because I was going to well, I'd moved from Swift Current to Regina, and there was quite a difference in the fun part of schools, you know. And so I thought, well, I'm going to take a break and have a baby. Well, that didn't happen right away. So in the meantime, somebody invited me to a Tupperware party, which I didn't want to go to, but they phoned and said, you better come. Well, I ended up selling Tupperware, and I loved working with people, using my teaching, you know, to teach how to use Tupperware. And I was in that for 17 years. So I ended up going into sales, and that's what I've done ever since. My last job, which I just retired at when I was 78, was real estate in Swift Current. So I've just enjoyed working with people and their crafts and whatever they want, whatever they need. I enjoy working with them. No, I opened a variety store there, and I had that for a while because I was in sales and was gone. You know, traveled quite a bit with different sales. I sold many different things, and I I like to participate more in creating things. And so that's where the museum idea got started. And then one day I went to buy a birthday gift for somebody, and there was really no place to buy it. So that's when I decided to open my own little variety shop again, because I knew of all the people. This was before the museum. That was before all the people I knew had all these different crafts that I could sell in the store on consignment sort of thing, and baking and things like that. And then I had that for a few years, and then I went into selling dinnerware because I love dishes, and closed the little shop sort of thing too. So the shop didn't make a lot of money, but it was again fun to. It was just a fun place to be. Yeah, and then my husband passed away later on, so that's why I ended up moving away from Hodgeville, because I had to get a job then to carry on with my life sort of thing. So I really miss working at the museum. I always go back. I help them plan the 100th celebration for their 100th. I go back and I will do maybe different displays, but you know, when you do that, then you do the different displays and nobody comes to see them. You finally just, okay, what's there is good enough sort of thing. But yeah, it's tough. And Jean told me today that it's probably going to be her last year there. So that leaves one person and myself, if I can keep, you know, just from the outside looking in. That only leaves Terry Braun and whatever volunteers she can help. We have one gal from the town that goes every day to make coffee, and that's definitely a help. And her name is Joyce. So, and another one that will volunteer to go in for a day or so. It's you count on volunteers, and it's just been awesome to have volunteers for that many years. Had lots of good volunteers, but of course they moved away and passed away, and oh my, things have changed.
How far is Hodgeville from Regina?
It's about 2.5 hours, and we're close to Swift Current. We're an hour from Swift Current. You know, little towns are getting smaller, and all of the people from the little towns go to the city to work. You know, so they're gone all day and home at night. So there you go. They're just too busy to get involved in the community like it used to be. You know.
If these farms are getting bigger, do you think that these communities might disappear in time?
Well, communities have disappeared, that is for sure. As long as we can keep a school there, which we still have a school, and a hotel, like the more businesses we can keep, the better, the more it's going to stay there. Um, but little towns, if they don't have that, it's, you know, they just end up closing up everything and people moving away. because yeah, farms are getting huge. They're corporations. They're not family farms anymore.
So what happens in winter in Hodgeville?
In winter, well, like I said, they meet at the rink. They play hockey and go for coffee there. There's coffee at the rink and coffee at the craft shop, and that's about it. But so when there is a supper, a fowl supper, or a funeral, that's where you go to because you'll see everybody. They're so glad to go get out and see everybody again. So it becomes a great place for community. Yeah.
Do you get the chance to travel because you're an hour away?
Right. Yeah. Yep. So I can, in summer, I will go out there more often if there's a need, like when we were working on the 100th celebration, which turned out so awesome. We had to cancel, we had it all planned for 1 year and then COVID hit. So we had to cancel it and started the next year, and it still turned out good. So we were very fortunate to put it on hold for a year with all the plans. I used to get a little convoy going, people in 4 or 5 cars, and invite people to that we would take them on these little tours. And of course, that's kind of died down too. But that is one thing, to have a caravan. If you're interested, let's fill our cars and go. And once they go, they just loved it. Now, years ago, this is quite a while ago already, but we had quite a few cars, and we went to Morris and stopped there, and then at Hodgeville, and we had lunch, and then we went on to Assiniboia, and they have an art gallery there, and spent a whole day just going to the small museums, which are close enough to cover in a day. And it was so much fun, and because a lot of the widows, for instance, they don't get out of Swift Current. They're here, and they don't know where to go. They don't want to go by themselves, sort of thing. So I just think that I've always wanted to start a little tour thing, but I think there's a lot to do with insurance and things like that too that prevents you from doing it. But I think last year I tried to hire. We have a limousine in here that would hold 12 people or something. Well, there was a really nice greenhouse at Hodgeville which closed last year because it's being sold, and so I tried to get that, but it was a wrong weekend or something. But that would have been fun, fill the limousine and go to these different places. And there's a few of us that still do that, but you need to involve more people somehow. When I lived there, there's always your community things that you go and attend to, whatever they had on back then. And back then there were more kids, so there was the ball games and the hockey games and things like that, and the ringette games where your rink was full. I think some of my probably best memories were once the museum was established, and we planned family days, and we planned all kinds of celebrations at the museum where people came. There were picnics we had one picnic where we had the box socials where the women used to put lunches in boxes and then auctioned them off, and you had to eat lunch with those people and so on. So just things like that. We just had so much fun getting together at the museum and the things that we planned. Other than that, it's just community living and enjoying the people that live in the community, which it's a good community. And like I said, when there's something going on, you can be sure everybody's there. I love going back to the fowl suppers because I get to see everybody. Now, mind you, they're all gray haired like I am, so it's changed a lot. But that's where you go to see people and visit and reconnect with them, sort of thing.